The tiny blue light blinked steadily in the darkness of my home office. I sat frozen before my laptop screen, the room's only illumination casting harsh shadows across my face. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched the footage streaming from the hidden camera I'd installed that morning. My husband of 11 years. Elliot moved through our living room below, meticulous in his preparations. He straightened the throw pillows, uncorked an expensive bottle of Cabernet to breathe, and adjusted the dimmer switch to create the perfect ambiance. The careful attention to detail wasn't what made my stomach clench. It was the nervous way he checked his watch, smoothed his hair, and straightened his collar. In our entire marriage, I'd never seen him prepare for me with such anticipation. I'd been suspicious for months, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. When the doorbell rang, Elliot took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and opened the door. The person who walked in wasn't the coworker I'd imagined, or the younger woman my darkest fears had conjured. Instead, I watched as my own mother stepped over our threshold and into my husband's waiting embrace. 6 months earlier, Elliot and I had been in a different place, literally and figuratively. We'd just returned from celebrating our 10th anniversary with a second honeymoon in Greece. The trip had been a hard-won luxury after years of career building. I'd recently made partner at my architectural firm, and Elliot's software company had finally stabilized after a rocky start. Life felt settled, accomplished, the way I'd always imagined it would be by the time we reached our late 30s. "When are you two going to start thinking about a family?" My mother, Diane, had asked over brunch the Sunday after our return. She'd been asking some variation of this question since our 5th anniversary. But lately her inquiries had taken on a desperate edge. "Mom, we've talked about this," I said, cutting into my eggs Benedict with more force than necessary. "We're still figuring things out." At 38, Rebecca, there's not much left to figure out. She glanced at Elliot, seeking an ally. "Don't you want children, Elliot?" I felt him tense beside me. "We both do," he said diplomatically. When the time is right, the truth was more complicated. After years of ambivalence, I'd recently decided I didn't want children at all. Elliot still did. It was the fault line in our otherwise solid marriage, the conversation we'd become experts at avoiding. "Well, don't wait too long," my mother sighed. "I'd like to be young enough to enjoy my grandchildren." That evening, lying in bed beside Elliot, I broke our unspoken agreement not to discuss it. "We need to talk about the baby thing." He set down his book. "I thought we agreed to revisit it after you settled into your partnership." "I know, but I've been thinking about it a lot and—" I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. "I don't think my answer is going to change, Elle. I don't want children." Silence expanded between us, heavy and uncertain. Finally, he asked, "Is it definitely no, or just not right now?" "It's no," I said softly. "I'm sorry." He didn't respond immediately, just stared at the ceiling, his profile sharp in the dim light. "I understand," he said eventually, though his voice was hollow. "I just need some time to process." I reached for his hand. "We can talk more about it." "Not tonight," he said, squeezing my fingers before releasing them. "I've got an early meeting tomorrow." "Let's get some sleep." That was the beginning of the distance. Elliot started working later, coming home exhausted and preoccupied. Meaningful conversations became rare, replaced by practical discussions about household matters and schedules. When I tried to revisit the topic of children, he deflected, claiming he was still processing or too tired to engage. By March, the late nights had become routine. "Another meeting?" I asked one evening as he slipped on his jacket at 7:30. "Client dinner," he explained. "They're in from Chicago, only here for tonight." I nodded, though suspicion had begun to curl through my thoughts. "Which client?" "Meridian Systems," he answered without hesitation. "The healthcare software implementation." The ease of his response should have reassured me, but something in his eyes, a careful blankness, only deepened my unease. After he left, I called his office on a pretense, only to learn from his assistant that the Meridian team had rescheduled their visit for the following month. That night marked the first time I'd caught him in a direct lie. But looking back, I realized there had been smaller deceptions building for weeks. Unexplained charges on our credit card. Text notifications he quickly dismissed when I entered the room. The subtle shift in his cologne, slightly stronger, as if reapplied midday. The obvious explanation was an affair, but something about that didn't fit. Elliot had always been transparent, almost painfully honest. Even as teenagers, we'd met in high school, separated during college, and reconnected in our mid-20s. He'd been terrible at keeping secrets. The first Christmas we were dating, he'd been so excited about the gift he'd bought me that he'd confessed what it was 3 weeks before the holiday. Whatever was happening, I needed to know. I confided in my best friend Zara. "You could just ask him directly," she suggested over coffee. I tried. He said he's working on a new project. Very hush-hush. Potential investors involved. Do you believe him? I stirred my latte, watching the foam swirl. I want to. Zara reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Then what's your gut telling you? That something's off. He's hiding something, and I'm afraid... My voice cracked. I'm afraid it's because of what I told him about not wanting children. Like he's reevaluating everything. Oh, honey. She squeezed my hand. That's a legitimate concern to have. But you need facts, not just fear. If asking isn't working, maybe it's time for a more direct approach. 2 days later, I purchased a small security camera disguised as a desk clock. I placed it on the bookshelf in our living room, angled to capture most of the main floor. I felt sick doing it. This violation of trust was so contrary to the relationship we'd built. But the alternative was letting my imagination continue its torturous scenarios. For the first week, the footage showed nothing unusual. Elliot came home on the nights he said he would, at roughly the times he claimed. He worked on his laptop, watched TV, made himself simple dinners on the nights I worked late. Several times he picked up framed photos of us, studying them with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Then came the Wednesday he claimed he had another late client meeting. Don't wait up, he texted. Might grab drinks after. Love you. Instead of leaving the house, however, Elliot spent the evening transforming our living room. He vacuumed, straightened, even brought out the crystal wine glasses we used only for special occasions. He changed from his work clothes into a cashmere sweater I'd given him last Christmas, the deep blue one that brought out his eyes. And then, at exactly 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My mother looked different than she had at Sunday brunch just 4 days earlier. Her silver-streaked hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She'd traded her typical cardigan and slacks for a burgundy wrap dress I'd never seen before. Most striking was her expression, a nervous anticipation that mirrored Elliot's. "You look beautiful," my husband told her as she stepped inside. "Is that a new dress?" My mother actually blushed. "Rebecca helped me pick it out for my birthday last year. I've never had occasion to wear it." She glanced around the living room. "You've gone to a lot of trouble." "Not at all." Elliot gestured toward the couch. "Wine?" "Please." I watched, bewildered, as my husband poured 2 glasses of Cabernet and sat beside my mother. Not too close, but with a comfortable familiarity that made my skin prickle. What was happening? Why was my mother here, in our home, having wine with my husband while I thought he was at a business meeting? "I appreciate you meeting me like this," my mother said after taking a sip of her wine. "I know it's unorthodox." Elliot shook his head. "Diane, you're family. And this is important to you." "It is." She set down her glass. "But I'm still not sure it's the right approach. Going behind Rebecca's back feels..." "We're not going behind her back," Elliot interrupted gently. "We're giving her a gift, one she doesn't know she wants yet." My mother smiled, a sad edge to it. "You really believe she'll change her mind?" "I have to believe it," Elliot said, his voice low and intense. "The Rebecca I know has always wanted children. This sudden reversal, I think she's scared. Success at work, the pressures of her new position, it's making her cautious. But deep down, I know who she is." The room seemed to tilt around me, They were talking about me, about the decision I'd made after years of careful thought. Planning some kind of intervention or surprise to change my mind. "I brought what you asked for," my mother said, reaching for her handbag. She removed a small velvet pouch and handed it to Elliot. He opened it carefully, tipping the contents into his palm. Even through the camera's limited resolution, I recognized the antique silver rattle that had been passed down through my mother's family for generations. The same rattle that had been promised to me for my first child. "It's beautiful," Elliot whispered, turning it over in his hands. "And the other items?" My mother nodded. "All in storage, as we discussed. The crib, the christening gown, the quilt my grandmother made. They're yours whenever you're ready." "Perfect." Elliot's smile was unlike any I'd seen before, secretive, almost triumphant. "And the doctor?" "Dr. Levine can see you both next Tuesday at 4. I told her office you'd call to confirm. A fertility specialist? Already?" My whispered question filled my empty office unanswered. "And she's the best?" Elliot asked. "The very best. She helped my cousin's daughter after 3 miscarriages. Twins, if you can believe it." My mother leaned forward. "But Elliot, are you sure about this approach? The surrogate, the timing of it all? It seems so calculated." Surrogate. The word landed like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to change my mind. They were arranging to have children without my consent. "It's the only way," Elliot insisted. "Once Rebecca sees how beautiful it could be, holds a baby that's biologically hers, she'll understand what she's been missing. And with a surrogate, she doesn't have to put her career on hold. It's the perfect solution. And if she doesn't agree? If she sees this as a betrayal?" My husband's expression hardened in a way I'd never witnessed before. "Then I'll have to decide what matters more, my marriage or having a family. Because I can't give up on being a father, Diane. I won't." The camera caught my mother's sharp intake of breath. "You'd leave her?" "I don't want to think about that possibility," he said, but his tone suggested he'd thought about little else. "That's why this has to work. We need to present it as a complete package. Surrogate selected, financial arrangements made, doctor appointments scheduled. Remove all the barriers and anxieties. Show her it can be seamless." "It's manipulative," my mother said, though her tone held more consideration than condemnation. "It's necessary," Elliot countered. "You know how Rebecca gets when she thinks she's being pressured. She digs in her heels. This way she sees the end result before she has to make a decision." I stopped the footage, unable to watch anymore. My hands shook as I closed my laptop. The betrayal was so much worse than I had imagined. Not an affair, a conspiracy. The 2 people I trusted most in the world, plotting to override my autonomy, planning to create a life I'd explicitly said I didn't want. The apartment felt suddenly claustrophobic. I grabbed my keys and phone, needing to escape before Elliot returned. As I rushed down the stairs, my phone buzzed with a text from him. "Meeting running late. Don't wait up. Another lie in an apparently endless series." I drove aimlessly for almost an hour before finding myself outside Zara's apartment building. She answered the door in pajamas, one look at my face enough to usher me inside without questions. Only when I was seated on her couch, a strong bourbon in my hand, did she speak. What happened? The story spilled out of me in jagged fragments. The camera, the meeting, the surrogate, the ultimatum. Zara listened without interruption, her expression shifting from shock to outrage. "That manipulative bastard," she finally said when I'd finished. "And your mother! I can't believe she'd go along with this." "She's always wanted grandchildren," I said, surprising myself by defending her. "And she believes Elliot knows me better than I know myself." "That's not the point," Zara insisted. "The point is they're making plans about your body, your genetics, your life, without your consent. It's reproductive coercion, Rebecca." "It's wrong," the term sent a chill through me. She was right. Despite the polished veneer of concern for my career, what Elliot and my mother were planning was fundamentally about control, wresting it from me and reshaping my life according to their vision. "What are you going to do?" Zara asked. I stared into my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I need to do it before Tuesday's appointment. You could confront them separately, she suggested. Divide and conquer. The strategist in me recognized the wisdom in that approach. My mother, faced with my knowledge of her betrayal, would crumble easily. Elliot would be more difficult. He clearly believed his actions were justified by the nobility of his intentions. Or, Zara continued, reading my hesitation, you could give them exactly what they've planned, but with your own twist. What do you mean? A slow smile spread across her face. They want to surprise you? Fine. Let them arrange everything, get all their ducks in a row, then surprise them instead. The idea took root, sprouting possibilities. You think I should play along? Pretend I don't know? For now, she nodded. See how far they're willing to take this. Document everything. And then when the moment is right, I turned the tables, I finished for her. That night, I slept on Zara's couch, claiming to Elliot via text that I'd had too much wine at a client dinner to drive home safely. By morning, a plan had crystallized, one that would require patience and performance, but would ultimately force both Elliot and my mother to confront the full implications of their scheme. For the next 5 days, I became an actress in my own life. I returned home, kissed my husband good morning and good night, asked about his work, shared stories from my day. I called my mother, listened to her ask about Elliot, pretended not to notice how she steered our conversations toward children and family and legacy. All the while, I was gathering evidence. I installed tracking software on our shared iPad, which Elliot used primarily for reading. I gained access to his email by claiming I needed to retrieve a receipt he'd been forwarded. I made copies of our financial statements, noting the new account he'd opened 3 months earlier, likely the fund for his surrogacy plans. Most difficult was maintaining the facade of normalcy while my inner world crumbled. Each night after Elliot fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling and tried to reconcile the man breathing beside me with the stranger I'd seen on camera. How had I missed this evolution? Had there been signs I'd overlooked? Moments when he'd tried to tell me how essential fatherhood was to him? Or had he always been this person, capable of such calculated deception, and I'd simply chosen not to see it? By Monday night, I was ready. I'd taken the following day off work, telling my firm I had a medical appointment. Technically true, though not in the way they assumed. I'd spoken with a lawyer, outlined potential scenarios, understood my options. I'd withdrawn a significant sum from my personal savings, enough to secure a new apartment if necessary. And I'd prepared the final element of my plan, a counter surprise that would force everyone's true priorities into the light. Tuesday morning, I kissed Elliot goodbye as he left for work, noting the barely contained excitement in his eyes. Today was the day he believed everything would fall into place. The fertility specialist, the surrogate meeting, the beginning of his clandestine journey to fatherhood. See you tonight, he said, lingering at the door. Love you too, I replied, the words hollow in my mouth. As soon as he left, I retrieved the hidden camera, downloaded its contents to a secure drive, and positioned a new camera, this one clearly visible on the mantel. Then I called my mother. Rebecca, sweetheart, she answered, a false brightness in her voice. What a lovely surprise. I need to see you, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Today, if possible. It's important. Today? A note of panic crept in. I'm not sure I can. It has to be today, Mom. I'm taking the day off work specifically to talk to you. A pause, then. What's this about? Family matters, I said, the double meaning clear only to me. Things we need to discuss in person. Another pause, longer this time. All right. Why don't you come by around 1? I'll make lunch. Perfect, I said. And Mom? Don't mention this to Elliot. It's between us for now. The sharp intake of breath told me she understood the implication, that whatever I wanted to discuss involved secrets, hers or mine. Of course, darling. See you at 1. The stage was set. My mother's house, the home I'd grown up in, sat on a quiet street lined with mature oak trees. As I parked in the driveway, memories flooded back. Learning to ride a bike on this pavement, helping my father plant the rose bushes that still flanked the front door, sitting on the porch, swing after my first heartbreak as my mother stroked my hair and promised it wouldn't hurt. Forever. How had we come from those moments of unconditional support to this? Her collusion in a plan to fundamentally alter my life against my will? She opened the door before I could knock, her smile tight with anxiety. "Rebecca, come in, sweetheart." The house smelled of fresh bread and herb soup, my mother's go-to comfort meal for difficult conversations. I followed her to the kitchen, where the table was already set for two, a bouquet of daisies, my favorite, arranged in the center. "You're going through a lot of trouble," I observed, setting my purse on a chair. Inside was my phone, recording everything. Not at all. She stirred the soup, avoiding my eyes. "I've been meaning to have you over anyway." "It's been too long since we've had a proper visit." I sat at the table, watching her nervous movements. "You know why I'm here, don't you?" Her hand stilled on the ladle. "I assume it's about work. Your partnership, the new challenges." "It's about family," I corrected. "Specifically, the family you and Elliot are planning behind my back." The color drained from her face. The ladle clattered against the pot as she turned to face me. "Rebecca, Don't lie to me, Mom. Not anymore." I kept my voice steady, determined not to break. "I know everything. The fertility specialist, the surrogate, the appointment today at 4 o'clock. All of it." She sank into the chair opposite me, her composure crumbling. "How did you find out?" "Does it matter? The point is, I know what you've been doing. What I want to understand is why." "We were trying to help you," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "Elliot is devastated by your decision. He says you've always wanted children, that this is just fear talking. So you took his word over mine? Decided that he knows what I want better than I do?" "No, it's not like that." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We know how much your career means to you. The surrogate was a way to give you everything. Motherhood without compromising your professional goals." The casual dismissal of my agency infuriated me. Did it occur to either of you that I might have valid reasons for not wanting children? That I've spent years thinking about this decision? Of course, but you decided those reasons weren't good enough. That I needed to be managed, manipulated into the role you've always imagined for me. A flash of defiance crossed her face. "Is it so wrong to want my daughter to experience motherhood? To want grandchildren to love? It's wrong to conspire against me," I said firmly. "It's wrong to use my genetics without my consent. It's wrong to treat me like a wayward child instead of a grown woman capable of making her own choices." She looked away, shame finally registering. "We were going to tell you everything, just after the arrangements were made, when it felt real. It's real now," I said, retrieving my phone and placing it on the table between us. "And you're going to help me make sure Elliot understands exactly how real it is." My mother's eyes widened as I explained what I needed from her. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but cooperation in the final act of this painful drama. By the time I left her house, the soup cold and untouched, we had a new understanding. Not peace, but purpose. At precisely 3:45 that afternoon, I entered the office building where Dr. Levine, fertility specialist, maintained her practice. I checked in with the receptionist, confirming that yes, my husband would be joining shortly for our first consultation. Then I sat in the waiting room, heart hammering against my ribs, and waited. Elliot arrived at 3:58, briefcase in hand, expressions cycling from determination to shock as he spotted me in the corner. "Rebecca? How did you— Hello, Elliot." I rose, smoothing my skirt. "Surprise." Before he could recover, the receptionist called our names. "Mr. and Mrs. Harlow, Dr. Levine is ready for you." I moved past him toward the office door, leaving him no choice but to follow or make a scene. Inside, Dr. Levine, a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, greeted us warmly. "The Harlows, wonderful to meet you both." She gestured to the chairs opposite her desk. "Please sit. I understand you're interested in exploring surrogacy options." "Actually," I interjected before Elliot could speak, "there seems to be some confusion. My husband has arranged this appointment without my knowledge or consent. The doctor's smile faltered. I see. Perhaps it would be best if I give you two a moment. That won't be necessary, I assured her. We won't be taking much of your time. I simply wanted to make it clear for the record that I have not consented to any fertility treatments, surrogacy arrangements, or the use of my genetic material in any way. Rebecca, please, Elliot finally found his voice. If you'd just listen. I turned to him, years of hurt and betrayal crystallizing into cold clarity. No, Elliot. You listen. For months you've been lying to me, meeting with my mother, making plans for children I've explicitly told you I don't want. You've consulted doctors, researched surrogates, even secured family heirlooms, all while deliberately keeping me in the dark. His face paled. How do you know all this? Because I watched you, I said simply. I installed a camera after I caught you in a lie about your late meetings. I saw everything. You and my mother, plotting to circumvent my decision, discussing the possibility of leaving me if I didn't eventually come around to your way of thinking. Dr. Levine stood abruptly. I think I should definitely give you privacy. Please stay, I requested. As a medical professional, you should hear this. I turned back to Elliot. I came here today to make absolutely clear that I do not consent to having children, not naturally, not through surrogacy, not through any means. My body, my genetics, my choice. It's our marriage, he protested, desperation edging his voice. Our future. Don't I get any say in that? You had a say when we discussed it honestly. When I told you my decision and gave you the opportunity to tell me if it was a deal breaker. Instead, you chose deception. You chose to believe you could manipulate me into changing my mind. I know you, Rebecca, he insisted, better than anyone. The woman I married wanted children. We talked about names, about how we'd raise them. People change, I cut him off. I changed, and I had the respect to be honest with you about it, even knowing it might end us. You didn't extend me the same courtesy. Dr. Levine cleared her throat. Mr. Harlow, I need to be very clear. I cannot ethically proceed with any fertility treatments without Mrs. Harlow's explicit informed consent. What you're describing, attempting to pressure or deceive someone into parenthood, is reproductive coercion. It's not just unethical. In many jurisdictions, it's illegal. Elliot slumped in his chair, the full weight of his actions visibly settling on his shoulders. I never thought of it like that. I wanted us to have a family so badly. I thought once you saw the possibility. That's the problem, I said quietly. You saw me as an obstacle to overcome, not a partner to respect. That's not love, Elliot. It's control. A heavy silence filled the office. Finally, Dr. Levine spoke. I think we can all agree no medical procedures will be happening today. I'll leave you two to discuss your next steps privately. She rose, pausing at the door. Mrs. Harlow, if you need any resources or support, my office can provide them. When the door closed behind her, I turned to face my husband fully. I've spoken with a lawyer. I've documented everything, the lies, the planning sessions with my mother, this appointment. I'm prepared to file for divorce immediately, citing emotional abuse and attempted reproductive coercion. His face crumpled. Rebecca, please, we can work through this. Couples therapy, more time to talk. Or, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, you can agree to my terms. Hope flickered in his eyes. Terms? First, complete transparency. No more meetings with my mother or anyone else about our marriage without my knowledge. Second, you transfer the money from your secret account back to our joint savings. Third, I took a deep breath. You decide here and now whether you can accept a life without biological children. Not as a temporary position while you try to change my mind, but as our permanent reality. And if I can't, then we divorce amicably, I said. I won't contest a fair division of assets. I won't drag your name through public proceedings. But we end it cleanly today without further deception. Elliot stared at his hands for a long moment. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet with unshed tears. I've imagined being a father my entire life. Even before I met you, it was part of how I saw my future. I know, I said gently. And I'm sorry I can't give you that. But I'm not sorry for knowing myself well enough to make this choice. He nodded slowly. I need some time to think. Not to try to change your mind, he added quickly, seeing my expression harden, just to process everything. To decide if I can embrace a different future than the one I've always imagined. It wasn't the immediate resolution I'd hoped for, but it was honest. Perhaps the first completely honest exchange we'd had in months. Take the time you need, I said, rising from my chair. But not in our home. Not until you've decided. Where will I go? A bitter smile crossed my lips. I'm sure my mother would be happy to have you. You two have become quite close, after all. As I walked out of Dr. Levine's office, leaving Elliot behind, I felt simultaneously hollowed out and strangely liberated. The marriage I thought I had was gone, that much was clear. But in its place was something else, a fierce certainty in my own voice, my own choices, my own path forward. Whether that path would eventually include Elliot remained to be seen. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment, arranging freshly cut lilies in a vase. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the space I'd created for myself. Clean lines, open layout, walls adorned with architectural prints and travel photographs. Mine, entirely mine. The divorce had been finalized the previous week. In the end, Elliot couldn't reconcile himself to a childless future, nor could I forgive the depth of his deception. We'd parted with surprising civility, each recognizing that holding on would only prolong the inevitable. The man I'd loved for over a decade was fundamentally incompatible with the woman I'd become. My relationship with my mother had taken longer to address. For weeks after the confrontation, we'd communicated only through terse text messages, logistical details about family obligations, nothing more. The silence between us grew barbed with unspoken accusations and defenses. Then, on a rainy Sunday in June, she'd appeared at my door unannounced, soaked and tearful. I was wrong, she'd said without preamble. I thought I knew what would make you happy better than you did. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry. I'd let her in, made tea, and listened as she explained her actions, not excusing them, but contextualizing them through her own experiences and fears. How she'd regretted waiting until her late 30s to have me, her only child. How she'd watched friends bond with grandchildren while she remained in limbo. How Elliot's desperation had resonated with her own unresolved sense that a woman's ultimate fulfillment came through motherhood. It doesn't make what we did right, she'd concluded. But I need you to know it came from love, however misguided. Love without respect isn't love, I'd told her. It's possession, she'd nodded, accepting the rebuke. I'm trying to learn that. To see you as you are, not as I imagined you should be. We were building something new now, a relationship between adults with clear boundaries and hard-won understanding. It wasn't the easy closeness we'd once shared, but it was honest in a way our previous connection had never been. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I glanced at the clock, right on time. Opening the door, I found Zara and her partner Maya waiting with a bottle of champagne. Ready to celebrate your freedom? Zara asked, embracing me. And your new project? Maya added, gesturing to the blueprints spread across my dining table. The blueprints represented my most ambitious professional undertaking, yet a women's health center designed specifically to support reproductive autonomy in all its forms. The facility would include state-of-the-art fertility services alongside family planning, adoption resources, and support for those choosing to remain child-free. Dr. Levine had been an unexpected ally in the project, connecting me with healthcare providers who shared my vision of informed choice as a fundamental right. It's still in the early stages, I cautioned as we moved to the table. Funding isn't secured, and the zoning might be an issue. It's brilliant, Zara insisted, studying the drawings. Creating physical space that reflects the complexity of these choices. It's exactly what's needed. As we discussed the project, my phone buzzed with a text. Elliot's name appeared on the screen, the first communication we'd had since signing the final papers. Saw the announcement about your health center project in the business journal. It's important work. You're going to change lives. I'm proud of you, even from a distance. A complex emotion rose in my chest. Not regret, exactly, but acknowledgement of the connection we'd shared, the growth we'd experienced together and apart. I typed a simple response, "Thank you. I hope you're finding your path too." His reply came quickly. "Moving to Seattle next month. New job, new start. And I'm looking into foster parenting. Kids who need homes now, not creating new ones. Different from what I imagined, but it feels right." I smiled, genuinely happy for him. We'd both been forced to reimagine our futures, and perhaps that had been necessary all along. You'll be wonderful at that. The world needs more people who want to parent for the right reasons. Setting my phone aside, I rejoined my friends who were already opening the champagne. As Maya poured 3 glasses, Zara raised an eyebrow. "Good news?" "Just confirmation that sometimes the hardest choices lead exactly where we need to go," I said, lifting my glass. To new beginnings, on our own terms. As we clinked glasses, I thought about the hidden camera that had started it all, how an act born of suspicion had ultimately forced truth into the light. The painful revelations had cost me a marriage, but given me something more valuable: unshakable confidence in my own voice, my own choices, my own definition of fulfillment. The future I'd designed for myself might not include the traditional markers of success my mother had envisioned, or the family Elliot had desperately wanted. But it was authentic, purposeful, and entirely my own. In the end, that was the only surprise that mattered.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.